What would you do if a little girl walked up to you, smiled sweetly, and said, "Can you be my dad, just for one day?" Not knowing that one day would change the rest of your life. The wind bit through Jack Callahan's wool coat as he stepped out of his car, the New York winter settling like a quiet ache in his bones. Snow crunched under his polished shoes, the sidewalks already dusted with a light powder. He pulled his scarf tighter, more out of habit than need. Jack was a man used to cold outside. Inside it made little difference these days. He had just wrapped up a silent lunch at a quiet downtown bistro, one of those places with white tablecloths and waiters who whispered. A business meeting had been cancelled last minute, so he found himself with time, something he usually had none of, and now didn't know what to do with. Passing a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat, he paused, drawn by the warmth inside, the chatter, the hum of life he'd long stopped participating in. He might have gone in. He might have kept walking, but then he heard it. A small voice. Fragile, determined. "Sir, could you pretend to be my daddy?" Just for one day? Jack turned, startled. There she was, a little girl, no more than 6, standing in the doorway of the cafe, her small figure framed by falling snow and soft light from within. Her coat was too thin, her mittens mismatched, one blue, one fuzzy and pink. A red backpack, frayed at the corners, hung off one shoulder. But it wasn't her clothes that caught him. It was her eyes, big, brown, wide with a kind of trembling hope only a child could carry, the kind that asked without demanding, the kind that broke you without meaning to. Jack blinked. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" She took a tiny step forward, her breath making foggy clouds in the cold air. "Tomorrow is Daddy Day at my school. All the kids bring their dads, but I don't have one. I saw you and I thought maybe you could come." "Just pretend, one day. Please." It hit him like a train. The backpack, the mittens, the lopsided braid. And that voice. It was everything he hadn't let himself feel in years, 10 years to be exact. Jack's mind flashed to Jacob, his son, 6 years old when the accident happened, gone in a blink. A drunk driver, a rainy night, a toy airplane in the back seat that was never recovered. Jacob used to wear mismatched gloves, too. Said it made him look like an astronaut. He used to say something else, too. "You're the dad who knows how to fix broken things." Jack swallowed hard, blinking back a burn in his eyes he hadn't felt in a decade, and then the little girl said it. "You look like someone who knows how to fix broken things." His knees nearly buckled. For a moment he couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. "I'm sorry," he finally managed, stepping back. "I don't think—" The light in her eyes dimmed instantly. Her lips trembled, but she didn't cry. "Okay," she whispered. "I thought maybe." She turned and started walking away, small boots in soft snow. No tears, just quiet defeat. The kind of sadness that doesn't scream, it sinks under your ribs and settles there. Jack stood frozen. Then something in him broke. "Wait!" he called out. She stopped. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily," she said softly, still not turning around. Emily Carter. From inside the cafe, an older woman with silver hair sipped her coffee and watched. She murmured, half to herself, "That little girl's got a light in her. Don't let it go out." Jack looked at Emily, then at the woman. And just then, a woman rushed over, hair in a messy bun, coat too thin for this kind of cold, eyes tired from more than just lack of sleep. "Emily, sweetheart," she said breathlessly. "We've talked about this." She turned to Jack, mortified. "I'm so sorry, sir. She's been dreaming about Daddy Day for weeks. I never thought she'd actually ask someone." Jack stared at her. Ava Carter. He remembered her now. Years ago, she'd worked on a literacy program his foundation had supported. Smart, quiet, dignified. and now worn down, thin from effort and probably skipped meals, but still standing, still protecting. "I'm Ava," she added quickly. "Single mom. I work 2 jobs. I promise she meant no harm." Jack looked at her, hands red, chapped, her eyes bruised with fatigue, and then down at Emily, who was staring at the snow like it had betrayed her. "I'll do it," Jack said suddenly. Ava blinked. "I'm sorry. I'll come tomorrow." "What time?" Emily turned slowly, eyes widening. 8:15, she whispered. "South entrance." "I'll be there," Jack said. "I'll look for sparkly sneakers." Emily's face lit up like sunrise. "Got it," he said, smiling faintly. Ava looked at him, unsure. "You don't even know us." "I know enough," Jack replied, then glanced toward the cafe window. The older woman was still watching, smiling now. Emily stepped forward and placed her small hand into his gloved one. "You'll be great," she said simply. "You think so?" he asked, trying to steady his voice. She nodded. "You look like someone who knows how to fix broken things." This time, Jack didn't flinch. He just held her hand for a moment longer and thought, maybe, just maybe, it's not too late to start again. Jack Callahan had faced mergers, hostile takeovers, boardroom showdowns, but nothing quite prepared him for standing in front of a classroom door at PS 212, holding a sticker that read, "Dad for a day, guest." He adjusted the navy wool coat he'd picked carefully that morning, smoothed down his scarf, and inhaled the crisp Manhattan air. His heart thudded harder than it had during any corporate pitch or investor meeting. This was different. Through the glass, he saw rows of tiny desks, bright-colored posters, and paper turkeys still taped to the walls from last month. Children buzzed around like bees in spring. Then he saw her, Emily Carter, 6 years old. Sparkly sneakers, blue headband, eyes like lit candles. She spotted him and lit up like Christmas morning. With no hesitation, she broke into a full run down the hallway, backpack bouncing behind her. "You came," she cried, throwing her arms around him. Jack knelt, steadied by her small frame. "Of course I came," he said, voice soft. "I gave my word, didn't I?" She grinned so wide it could have powered the city. "I told everyone you would." Ava Carter followed behind her daughter, slower, her second-hand coat buttoned neatly, hair tied back. She looked better rested than yesterday, barely, but her eyes still held that quiet tiredness, the kind people wear after years of holding everything together alone. "Mr. Callahan," she greeted formally, "thank you again." "Call me Jack," he said gently. "It's my honor." A teacher appeared at the door, a kind woman in her late 30s with a warm smile and sensible shoes. "You must be Emily's?" Jack hesitated, but before he could reply, Emily stepped forward proudly. "He's my borrowed dad." The teacher blinked, then smiled. "Well, welcome." "We're happy to have you." Inside, the room smelled like crayons and juice boxes. Jack followed Emily to her desk front row, middle seat. Her name was written in big bubbly letters on a laminated tag. She had drawn a heart beside it. The day's schedule was written on the board. Daddy Day. Welcome, Story Circle, Art Time, Snack, Goodbye Song. Story Circle came first. Jack sat crisscross on a rug, knees loudly protesting under his tailored slacks. Emily climbed into his lap like it was the most natural thing in the world. She leaned against his chest as her teacher began reading The Giving Tree. The words swam in Jack's head, but he barely heard them. He was watching Emily's face, soaking in her reactions, her giggles, the way she whispered along with her favorite parts. She glanced up at him every so often, as if checking he was still there, still real. He always nodded. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Later, during art time, Emily showed him her folder of drawings. "This one's me," she said, holding up a scribbled self-portrait. "And this is Mommy. And this is you." Jack looked at the stick figure in a suit with what appeared to be a coffee mug and a lopsided smile. I like it, he said. Very accurate. She beamed. You've got good hair. I gave you extra. Snack time arrived. Capri Suns, string cheese, and tiny bags of pretzels. Jack excused himself briefly and stepped out into the hallway, needing a moment to breathe, and, frankly, to stretch his legs. He found a vending machine and fumbled for coins he never usually carried. As he waited for the coffee to clunk into the dispenser, he noticed Ava sitting on a bench near the window. She looked out over the snow-dusted playground, cup of tea in her hands, body folded in that quiet way mothers sit when they're trying not to fall apart. He walked over. She's something else, he said. She is, Ava replied, eyes still out the window. Thank you for staying. I wanted to, Jack said, handing her the coffee. She took it, surprised. Most men would have smiled politely and walked away. Most men haven't lost what I've lost. She turned to him then. Not just with her face, but with her full attention. A child, she asked softly. He nodded. Jacob, 10 years ago, drunk driver. I never thought I'd step into a school again. Ava looked down at her hands. She sees things in people, she whispered. Even the cracks. Especially the cracks. She told me I look like someone who can fix broken things. She told me that last night, Ava said. She said, Mommy, I think he's sad. Like me. Jack's throat tightened. She's not wrong, he murmured. There was a pause, not awkward. Just weighty. You fixed something today, Ava said. Even if it's just one day. Jack looked toward the classroom where Emily's laughter bubbled through the door. I don't think it's just one day, he said quietly. Back inside, the final activity was drawing time. Emily sat at her desk, tongue poking from the corner of her mouth in concentration, coloring like the world depended on it. She finished, stood up proudly, and walked over to Jack. This is us, she said. The drawing showed a big man with a crooked smile, holding hands with a little girl in sparkly shoes. Their stick fingers were interlocked. Jack looked at it for a long time. Is that me? He asked. Yep, and I gave you the right shoes this time. He laughed a real, unguarded laugh. As the class sang the goodbye song, Jack stood near the back, watching Emily dance and sing, her joy uncontainable. And when she ran back to him, backpack slung sideways, coat half-zipped, he bent down and whispered, Thank you for today. She squeezed his hand tightly. It's the best day I've ever had. Jack smiled. It's the best day I've had in a long time, too. The afternoon light had softened by the time Jack Callahan stepped out of the school building, Emily's small hand tucked securely in his. Ava Carter walked just beside them, her steps slower, cautious, like she was still unsure this day was real. Emily was practically bouncing. She said my story voice was the best, and Mr. Green told me he'd never seen me smile that much. And Jack, you were really good at snack duty. You didn't even mess up the juice boxes, Jack smiled, amused. I take my juice box duties very seriously. Ava glanced at him with a quiet chuckle. That's high praise. Kindergartners don't lie. The sidewalk glittered with slush and remnants of snow. They stopped at the corner, and Ava hesitated. I made spaghetti. It's nothing fancy. But if you're not in a rush... Jack paused. Dinner for him usually meant reservations, dim lighting, and overpriced menus. But that invitation, soft, uncertain, and deeply human, felt more significant than any Michelin star. I'd be honored, he said. Ava's apartment was modest, 2 bedrooms, cramped hallways, a couch with hand-sewn patches, but it radiated warmth. There were children's drawings on the fridge held up by chipped magnets and a shelf lined with borrowed library books. In the corner, a space heater hummed steadily. Emily kicked off her glittery shoes and darted into her room. Sorry about the clutter, Ava said, setting her purse down and smoothing her skirt. I cleaned yesterday, but, you know, life. Jack looked around. It's more home than most penthouses. Ava blinked, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. While she reheated the sauce and boiled water for noodles, Jack offered to set the table. The plates were mismatched, the silverware slightly bent, but it didn't matter. Everything felt grounded. Real. Emily returned wearing pajamas with stars on them and proudly announced, "I helped make the salad with a plastic knife." "You're a chef in training," Jack declared. Dinner was simple spaghetti, garlic toast from a day-old baguette, and a bowl of iceberg lettuce dotted with tiny tomatoes. But as they sat around the table, something unspoken wrapped around them, something that didn't exist in Jack's usual life of glass towers and boardrooms. Conversation flowed easily. Emily did most of the talking about her friend who wore the same socks every day, about her dream to be an astronaut veterinarian, because animals get sick in space, obviously, and about how she wanted to write a book called The Girl Who Found a Borrowed Dad. Ava listened, smiled, added quiet comments here and there, but mostly watched. Not just her daughter, but Jack. He was different than the polished man she remembered from that long-ago charity event. There was wear in his eyes, and something softer, too, like he had been holding his breath for years and was just now remembering how to exhale. After the last noodle had been eaten and Emily cleared her own plate with pride, she disappeared into her room and returned with a shoebox. "I want to show you something," she told Jack, climbing up beside him on the couch. The lid was decorated with crayon hearts and shiny stickers. Inside, baby pictures, a faded hospital bracelet, a lopsided Mother's Day card, a tiny tooth in a baggie, and wrapped in tissue a small wooden airplane with one broken wing. "My real daddy made that," Emily said quietly. "In high school." "Mom says he was really good at fixing things too." Ava stiffened from the kitchen. "Emily," but Jack raised a gentle hand. "It's okay." Emily's eyes were thoughtful. "He died when I was a baby. I don't remember him, but sometimes I feel like I miss him anyway." "Is that weird?" Jack's voice caught in his throat. "No," he said softly. "I think sometimes the heart remembers what the mind forgets." Ava turned away to wipe her eyes. Emily smiled, satisfied with the answer, and nestled closer to Jack's side. That night, after Emily went to bed after Jack helped dry the dishes, after the silence between him and Ava became less awkward and more comfortable, they stood together in the kitchen, hands resting on the counter. "She adores you," Ava said, almost a whisper. "I adore her," Jack replied. She's a lot. She's remarkable." Ava shook her head, letting out a quiet laugh. "I'm just surviving. Most days I'm patching clothes with duct tape, skipping dinner, missing bedtime. I'm not exactly winning Parent of the Year." Jack turned to her, his expression soft. "You're present." "That's more than most." They stood in silence for a beat. Then Ava asked, "Why'd you say yes that day?" Jack took a breath. "Because she reminded me of someone. And because I needed to be reminded that there's still good I can do." Ava's gaze lingered on his face, searching, measuring. Then, just as she was about to say something else, tiny footsteps padded into the room. Emily, in fuzzy socks and sleepy eyes, held something behind her back. "I want you to take this," she said, handing him the wooden airplane. Jack knelt down to her level, stunned. "Emily, are you sure?" She nodded solemnly. "Just for a little while, so you don't forget me." His throat tightened. "I won't," he said. "I promise." She reached out, gently touching his chest. "You fixed something today." "Not the wing, here." He didn't know how to respond, so he just hugged her tight, warm, real. Later, walking home under the glow of soft snow, Jack held the tiny plane in his hand. Its broken wing caught the moonlight just enough to shimmer. It had only been a day. But something told him. This story was just beginning. Jack Callahan didn't sleep much that night. His penthouse, usually a sanctuary of silence and steel, felt too still, too echoing. The city buzzed outside like always sirens, taxis, the low hum of late-night lives moving forward, but inside, everything was suspended in memory. He poured himself a glass of bourbon, stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, and stared down at the glowing Manhattan grid. But all he could see was her, Emily, 6 years old. Tiny hands, big eyes, hopeful words. "You fixed something today, not the wing. Here." She had touched his chest when she said it. And somehow, it had done exactly what she claimed. Jack turned from the window and walked to a hallway closet he hadn't opened in years. Behind golf clubs he never used, and winter coats he no longer wore, he found the box. Jacob's box. He sat on the floor and opened it slowly. Inside, a pair of tiny sneakers with worn soles. A faded drawing of a stick figure family, one figure labeled Dad with wild hair, and a blue glove. Only one. Jacob always lost the other, claiming astronauts didn't wear matching gloves. Jack laughed quietly, brokenly. A single tear slid down his cheek. How long had it been since he let himself miss Jacob like this? How long since he'd let anything real touch him? By morning, he was still in that spot, the wooden airplane from Emily beside Jacob's glove. He didn't move until the sun pierced the blinds like a whisper. That afternoon, Jack found himself standing in front of Ava Carter's apartment again. He had no appointment. No business here, but something inside him needed to go. The door opened before he knocked. Ava blinked at him, surprised but not displeased. "Did you forget something?" Jack held up a brown paper bag. "I made pancakes." She laughed, a real one this time. "You made pancakes?" "From a mix. I'm not that ambitious." She opened the door wider. "Come in." Inside, Emily was curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching a cartoon. She lit up when she saw him. "Mr. Jack." "You came back." "I brought pancakes," he said. Her eyes widened. "With syrup?" Jack reached into the bag. "And strawberries. You're the best pretend dad ever," she declared. Ava set out plates as Jack warmed the food. The apartment smelled like butter and something far better, belonging. After lunch, Ava washed dishes while Jack and Emily sat on the floor, building a castle out of old cereal boxes and duct tape. Emily named each tower and insisted the drawbridge must be pink. "You've got an engineer on your hands," Jack said. Ava smiled, drying her hands. "She has more ideas than I can keep up with." There was a rhythm here now, a pattern Jack hadn't expected to miss when he first walked away from it. But now, he couldn't imagine walking away again. Later, when Emily went to her room to do important princess paperwork, Jack and Ava sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea. Jack glanced around the apartment. "It's small," he said. Ava looked up, defensive. "We make it work." He held up a hand. "I didn't mean it like that. I meant it feels full, lived in. Warm." She relaxed slightly. "It's what we've got." Jack hesitated, then asked, "Do you ever wish things had turned out differently?" Ava studied him. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I hear her breathing at night. I feel her hand grab mine when she's scared, and I think maybe this isn't the life I imagined, but maybe it's the one that matters." Jack nodded slowly. "I built a company," he said, "a massive one. It filled headlines, calendars, bank accounts. But it never filled me." He looked at her, voice quieter now. This castle made of cereal boxes and duct tape. This might be the first real thing I've touched in a decade." Ava blinked, caught off guard by his honesty. Then just above a whisper, she said, "You're dangerous, Jack Callahan." He raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous?" She smiled. "To people like me. People who've learned not to want more than we can carry." Jack's response was lost as Emily came running out of her room, clutching something in her hands. "A memory box," she said. "We should make one for you, too." "For me?" Jack asked. Uh-huh, she said. Everyone important should have one. She began digging through her drawer, pulling out ribbon, stickers, even a glitter pen. Ava watched her daughter, then turned to Jack. She's letting you in. Jack met her eyes. And I'm not going anywhere. That night, as he left, Emily followed him to the door. She held up a photo she'd drawn 3 stick figures this time. One tall, one medium, and one tiny with a glitter crown. Us, she said. Our not pretend family. Jack stared at the drawing. He had no words. Good night, she said, hugging him fiercely. Jack hugged her back, closing his eyes. When he stepped out into the snow-covered street, the cold didn't bite quite as hard. The lights of the city seemed warmer, softer. And in his pocket, the little wooden airplane reminded him, sometimes the broken things we carry are just waiting for the right hands to hold them again. At first, it was just a look. Jack Callahan noticed it while picking up Emily from school one Thursday afternoon. A woman he vaguely recognized from the neighborhood watched him and Ava chatting on the sidewalk. Her eyes lingered a little too long, her smile too polite to be genuine. He brushed it off. Harlem was a neighborhood built on whispers, and Jack wasn't naive about curiosity, especially when a man in a luxury car showed up at a public school nearly every day. But then came the second look, and the third. Then, the headline. It appeared on a neighborhood blog early Sunday morning. Powerful CEO's secret family. Jack Callahan seen playing daddy to local child. Below it was a photo, blurry but unmistakable. Jack holding Emily on his shoulders at the winter fair, both of them laughing, her cat-eared hat crooked from the ride. The image, to anyone with a heart, looked sweet, joyful, innocent. But the caption twisted it. Is Callahan hiding something? Sources suggest emotional entanglement with single mother could spell trouble for his boardroom reputation. Jack stared at the screen in disbelief. He felt nothing at first. Just the cold, the kind that crept into your bones and sat there. He wasn't ashamed of Emily. Or of Ava. He was proud to be part of their lives. But this was something else entirely. He closed the laptop with a quiet snap and sat back in his chair. It was only Monday when Ava called. Her voice was tight, controlled, too controlled. Have you seen it? She asked. I have. I didn't think they'd come after me. I thought they'd go after you. They're not coming after anyone, Jack said. They're stirring the pot. That's what cowards do. But Ava wasn't listening. My boss saw it, she whispered. Charles Whitmore. The name landed like lead in Jack's stomach. Charles Whitmore, philanthropist, community board chair, and the man who had once offered Ava a job at the library. He also happened to be the godfather of Emily, and Ava's late husband's uncle. Jack sat up straighter. What did he say? He asked for a meeting, she said. Said the board is concerned about the optics. Jack's jaw clenched. This isn't about optics. No, Ava said. It's about power. By Tuesday, things moved fast. Charles and his wife, Vanessa, had requested an official review of Ava's household stability. In the documents, they claimed to be acting in Emily's best interests, concerned that Ava was involving her daughter in a potentially unstable emotional entanglement. Jack's name was everywhere. They weren't just questioning Ava's parenting, they were implying Emily would be better off with them. Jack wanted to scream. Instead, he showed up at Ava's apartment with legal documents, folders, and a plan. She met him at the door, arms crossed. Her face was tight, not with anger but fear. I can't let you fight this for me, she said. You're not alone, Jack replied. Let me help. That's exactly what they want to see, Ava snapped. A woman who can't stand on her own. Jack paused, wounded, but he understood. Then what do we do? He asked gently. Ava looked down at her hands, raw from stress and the cold. "I walk away," she whispered. "From this?" "From you." Jack stared at her. "No," he said. "Don't do that." "I don't want to," she said. "But if I don't, they'll twist us into something ugly again. They'll make it look like I used you to get ahead." He stepped back, his voice low. "So what happens to us?" Ava's voice cracked. "You go back to your life. I go back to surviving." Jack didn't try to argue. He just nodded and walked away, the little wooden airplane in his coat pocket pressing painfully against his chest. The silence was unbearable. Days passed. Jack didn't text. Ava didn't call. Emily stopped asking about him out loud, at least. At night, Ava found her daughter drawing pictures of 3 stick figures again. But this time, she didn't show anyone. Jack sat alone in his apartment, staring at a table set for no one. He had been willing to step into their lives with open arms, but now he was back to closed doors. And the worst part? It felt like losing Jacob all over again. By Friday morning, the official petition arrived. Charles and Vanessa Whitmore were seeking temporary guardianship of Emily. Their grounds? Financial instability, lack of structure, exposure to public scandal, and the most cutting line of all, the mother's recent romantic involvement with a high-profile executive poses emotional risk to the child. Ava sat at the kitchen table, letter in hand, tears hot and silent. Emily sat nearby, quietly coloring in her memory box. Ava looked up. "I fought so hard to build something for us," she whispered. "I know," Jack said. She hadn't even heard him come in. "I couldn't stay away," he added, gently placing his keys on the table. "You're not safe here," she said. "I don't care." She shook her head. "You'll lose everything." "I already did. Once." Jack stepped closer, his voice firm but soft. "We are not letting them take her." Ava met his gaze. "Then we fight. Together." That night, Emily asked Jack a simple question. "Are you going to be my pretend dad forever?" Jack looked at her. "No," he said. Her face fell. He reached forward and touched her cheek. "Because there's nothing pretend about this anymore." The courthouse felt colder than the street outside, not because of the weather, but because of what was at stake. Ava Carter sat rigid on a hard wooden bench, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Across from her sat Charles and Vanessa Whitmore, crisp in their tailored coats, calm as stone. They didn't glance her way. They didn't need to. Their confidence spoke for them. Emily sat between Ava and her overworked public attorney, legs swinging, clutching a stuffed penguin tight to her chest. She didn't fully understand why they were here, but she understood it was serious. Jack Callahan arrived moments before the hearing. He didn't come with a legal team, no entourage. Just a manila folder under one arm, and a quiet, steady presence that made Ava exhale for the first time that morning. "You came," she whispered. He met her eyes. "Always." Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere thickened like fog. The judge, Helen Blake, a composed black woman in her early 60s, took her seat at the bench. Her eyes were sharp, her posture unimpeachable. "This is the matter of Whitmore v. Carter," she announced, adjusting her glasses. Charles Whitmore stood first. "We are not here to take anything away from Ms. Carter," he said, voice smooth, like silk wrapping around a blade. "We merely seek temporary guardianship to ensure Emily's emotional well-being in light of recent instability." "Instability?" Ava said under her breath. Jack placed a calming hand near hers. Charles continued. "We offer resources, structure, and above all, a life free from scandal. Ms. Carter's association with Mr. Callahan has introduced unwanted attention and risk to the child." Jack could feel his pulse rising. Not from anger, but restraint. Then Judge Blake turned toward him. "Mr. Callahan, I understand you requested to speak." Jack rose, stepping forward. "I did, Your Honor." The room tensed. Jack placed the folder on the clerk's table. Inside, you'll find evidence that Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore commissioned a fabricated story about Miss Barr, Carter and myself. Bank transfers to a local blogger, email correspondences, and a signed affidavit from the journalist who came forward after legal pressure. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Judge Blake arched an eyebrow. You have the blogger's statement? Yes, ma'am. Charles shifted in his seat, whispering furiously to Vanessa, whose lips tightened. Jack looked directly at the judge. This isn't about concern. It's about control. Miss Carter has raised her daughter with grace, love, and resilience. Emily is safe, happy, and thriving, not in spite of Ava, but because of her. The judge glanced over the documents. Jack continued, his voice steadying with each word. I am not Emily's biological father. But I have been a father. I know the weight of it. I know the loss of it. And I know when something sacred is trying to be taken under the guise of protection. A silence settled over the room. Then something unexpected happened. Emily stood up. Tiny boots clicking against the linoleum, she walked to the front of the courtroom. The bailiff moved to stop her, but Judge Blake raised a hand. Let the child speak. Ava's breath caught. Emily climbed up on the step stool beside the witness box and faced the judge, who smiled kindly. Emily took a deep breath. I want to stay with my mommy, she said. She makes me spaghetti when I'm sad. She sings even if she's tired, and she lets me wear sparkly shoes. A few chuckles escaped from the back rows, but Emily wasn't finished. And Mr. Jack, he reads to me. He listens when I talk about space and penguins, and why I think clouds are secretly made of mashed potatoes. Even the judge cracked a smile. Emily's voice dropped slightly. He's not my real daddy. But he listens like one, and I love him. She looked directly at Charles and Vanessa. I don't want to live in a house with fancy carpets and no hugs. Silence again. But this time, not uncomfortable, just reverent. Judge Blake leaned back in her chair, the weight of the testimony of truth heavy in the air. She looked at Ava. You've remained silent through much of this, Miss Carter. Ava stood slowly. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. I never wanted to fight anyone. I just wanted to be a mom. I don't have a big house, I don't have a PR team, but I do have love. And Emily has never gone a day without knowing that. She looked at Jack. And I didn't bring him into our lives to fix anything. I brought him in because he chose to show up. Over and over. Judge Blake nodded. Court will recess for 10 minutes while I review the material. When the gavel came down, Ava collapsed into her chair. Jack sat beside her. Emily crawled into her lap and tucked her head beneath Ava's chin. 10 minutes later, Judge Blake returned. She didn't sit right away. She stood. This court has reviewed the evidence submitted this morning. The actions taken by the petitioners, Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, constitute a breach of ethical conduct and a deliberate attempt to manipulate this court's process. Charles looked like he'd swallowed a stone. Judge Blake turned to Ava. Miss Carter, full custody remains with you. This court finds no grounds for any change in guardianship. Furthermore, Mr. Callahan is recognized as a consistent and positive presence in the minor's life. She sat down and struck the gavel once. Case dismissed with prejudice. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed, but Jack shielded Ava and Emily as they walked down the steps. Reporters shouted questions. He ignored them. Emily looked up at him. Does this mean you're staying? Jack smiled. Yes, Starshine. It means I'm staying. They walked toward his car, Ava a step behind. She watched them, Jack's hand gently resting on Emily's shoulder, Emily grinning up at him. And for the first time in weeks, Ava allowed herself to believe they weren't just surviving anymore. They were becoming something real. Something whole. The courtroom victory lingered like the final note of a powerful song, resonant, triumphant, but slowly fading. Life, as it tends to do, moved forward. Emily went back to school. Her classmates greeted her with drawings and stickers and questions about what court was like. Ava returned to the library, where the head librarian gave her a hesitant nod and said, "I'm glad things worked out, for now." The funding board, still influenced by Charles Whitmore's allies, remained silent. And Jack? Jack stayed, not just in the big public ways, picking Emily up from school or carrying her on his shoulders through the farmer's market, but in the quiet ones too. Like washing the dishes after dinner, or kneeling beside Emily's bed to fix a wobbly leg on her nightstand, or falling asleep on Ava's couch, one hand still holding the TV remote. They didn't talk about labels. There was no formal "what are we now" conversation. But something had shifted. Jack had stepped into their lives and stayed. And that made all the difference. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, Jack stood at Ava's stove, stirring soup while Emily sang off-key in the other room. Ava walked in from work, damp from the downpour, and paused in the doorway, taking in the sight. "You know, most CEOs don't stir soup," she said. Jack looked over his shoulder, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Most CEOs don't know what matters." She smiled, dropped her bag, and walked over to the counter. "There's something about seeing you here that still surprises me," she admitted. "I can leave the soup unattended if that helps," he teased. She nudged his arm. "I'm serious, Jack." His smile softened. "I used to think showing up meant sending checks, making statements, being visible," he said. "But staying is quieter. It's messier. It's real." Ava exhaled slowly. "I'm still learning how to let someone stay," she confessed. "You're doing better than you think." That weekend, Jack took Emily to the planetarium. It wasn't a grand gesture. No photographers, no curated event. Just a rainy Saturday, a bag of fruit snacks, and 2 tickets to a show about black holes. Emily sat between Jack and another child her age, gasping loudly every time a planet appeared. She clutched Jack's hand and whispered, "I bet stars don't feel lonely." "They've got each other." Jack squeezed her hand. "That's the trick, isn't it? Finding the ones who orbit close and never drift." When they got home, Emily ran inside to show Ava her glow-in-the-dark planet sticker. Jack lingered by the doorway. "She said stars don't get lonely," he told Ava. Ava looked at him, something gentle in her eyes. "She's wrong. Stars burn. They're brilliant. But they're also dying, Jack." He nodded slowly. "That's why we need gravity," he said. "Something that holds us in place." She stepped closer, her voice soft. "And what holds you?" He didn't speak right away. Then, "You. Her. This." But the quiet never lasted long. Monday morning, Jack walked into his office downtown and found a note on his desk. It wasn't signed. Just typed, "Be careful who you attach yourself to. Not all homes deserve to be built." Jack's jaw clenched. The smear campaign was supposed to be over, but someone was still watching, still trying to tear them apart quietly now from the shadows. He didn't show Ava the note right away. She had been sleeping better, smiling more, breathing easier. He wouldn't take that from her, not yet. Later that week, Ava stood at the front of the library during story time, reading The Velveteen Rabbit to a group of toddlers. Jack sat in the back with Emily, watching. When Ava read the line, "Real isn't how you are made. It's a thing that happens when someone loves you for a long, long time," Jack felt something catch in his throat. Emily looked up at him. "You're real," she whispered. He looked down at her, startled. "You're not pretend," she said. "You stayed." And that, more than any courtroom win or headline, was the moment Jack knew. He had become a father again. Not by blood. Not by law, but by love. That night, Ava found the note Jack had hidden in a drawer while looking for a flashlight. Her hands trembled as she read it. When Jack walked in with a fresh stack of folded laundry, she was waiting. "You should have told me," she said, holding the paper. He paused, then exhaled. I didn't want to scare you. I'm not scared, she said. I'm tired of people thinking we're fragile, like we'll fall apart if they push hard enough. She looked up at him. I don't want you to carry this alone. Jack stepped closer. You're not fragile, Ava. You're the strongest person I know. And I'm stronger with you, she said quietly. He dropped the laundry and pulled her into his arms. You're not the only one learning to stay, he whispered. Later, as they tucked Emily into bed, she rolled over and mumbled, Don't forget, we're a galaxy. Jack paused. A galaxy? Yep, she said sleepily. We spin together. That's what makes us real. He looked at Ava, who was smiling through her exhaustion. Jack kissed Emily's forehead. And we'll keep spinning, he whispered, no matter what. For a few precious weeks, life felt normal. Jack Callahan still split his time between board meetings and bedtime stories, but somehow both had found a rhythm. Emily had stopped asking if he'd be there the next day because he always was. And Ava, though still guarded, let herself fall into the comfort of routine. They weren't pretending anymore, but the world, as always, had its own ideas. It started small. A board member from Jack's company pulled him aside after a quarterly meeting and said, Some investors are uneasy with the recent media attention. Jack raised an eyebrow. The media attention I didn't ask for? The man shrugged. Perception is power, Jack. And right now, people are whispering. Jack dismissed it with a calm nod. But inside, something twisted. A few days later, Ava found herself called into a special meeting at the library. The funding committee, still partially influenced by Charles Whitmore's circle, claimed it was a routine check-in, but their questions were sharp. How do you intend to shield your daughter from further public scrutiny? Have you considered how your relationship with Mr. Callahan might affect the institution's image? Ava sat up straighter. I work 2 jobs. I raise my daughter alone. I've never once used my connection to Jack for anything. You only noticed me when he showed up. The room fell silent. But the damage had been done. That night, Ava and Jack sat on his apartment balcony, watching the lights of the city blink back at them like stars that forgot how to shine. They're pushing me out, she said quietly. Jack looked at her. We can fight it. She shook her head. I'm tired, Jack. Every time we rise, they wait to pull us back down. You're not alone in this. She turned to him, her eyes searching. But I keep wondering, are we hurting each other just by trying to stay together? That question struck harder than anything the world had thrown at him. Jack leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You're not hurting me, Ava. You've given me something I thought I lost forever. Her voice wavered. You say that, but what if I cost you everything? Your reputation, your company. I don't care about the company, Jack said suddenly, sharper than he meant to. She blinked. He softened. I built it to fill a hole left by losing Jacob, but none of it matters like this does. You and Emily, this is the first thing that's felt real in 10 years. Ava's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. Then, quietly, she said, maybe it's not about fighting back. Maybe it's about redefining what winning looks like. The next morning, Jack received a delivery at his office. No name, no return address. Inside the envelope, a grainy photo of Emily at the playground taken from across the street. No words, no threats, but the message was clear. We're still watching. Jack stood frozen, the photo crumpling slightly in his hand. Later that evening, he showed it to Ava. She sat down at the kitchen table, one hand gripping the photo, the other pressed to her forehead. They're never going to let us breathe, she whispered. Jack leaned against the counter, jaw tight. Then maybe we disappear. Ava looked up. You mean run? I mean start over, somewhere they can't touch us. She stared at him for a long moment. And leave everything behind? Not everything, he said. just what doesn't matter anymore. Ava looked toward Emily's room, the soft glow of her nightlight spilling into the hallway. Sometimes, she said, voice barely audible, justice is just the absence of fear. Jack nodded slowly. Then let's find that. That night, neither of them slept. But when morning came and the world pushed back again, they stood together, hands intertwined, not to fight, but to protect what they'd built. Not with noise, but with presence, with love, with staying. The silence after the photo felt heavier than any accusation. Ava Carter double-locked the apartment door that night, checked every window twice, and pulled the curtains shut until not even the streetlights could reach inside. She didn't tell Emily. How could she? To Emily, the world was still safe. Jack still brought pancakes. Mommy still tucked her in with silly songs. The monsters had stayed in her books, but Ava knew better. Monsters wore suits, sat on boards, smiled in press photos, and sometimes watched your child from across a playground. The next day, Jack called a man he hadn't spoken to in years. Ben Delaney, an investigative journalist Jack once helped during a major whistleblower case. Jack explained everything: quiet threats, fake blogs, shady surveillance. Ben didn't hesitate. "Give me a week," he said. "I'll bring light to the shadows." That week, Jack barely left Ava and Emily's side. He worked remotely, made school drop-offs, helped Emily glue glitter to her science project about the solar system. Every moment felt borrowed, fragile. One night, as they all sat at the kitchen table after dinner, Emily looked up from her coloring sheet. "Is someone trying to take me away again?" she asked. Ava and Jack froze. "What makes you say that?" Ava asked, keeping her voice calm. Emily shrugged. "You're both whispering more, and locking doors, and Mommy watches out the window like she's waiting for something bad." Ava swallowed hard. Jack leaned in. "No one's taking you anywhere, Starshine. We promise." Emily looked at him seriously. "Then you better hold on tighter." He did. By Friday, Ben delivered. The story dropped at dawn. Exposed. Power couple's secret campaign to strip mother of custody manipulation, money, and media leaks revealed. It spread like wildfire. Screenshots, bank records, emails, even testimony from the blogger who admitted he'd been paid to write the fake headline about Jack and Ava. By noon, the Whitmore's philanthropic sponsors began pulling out. By 2 p.m., Ava's library board announced Charles Whitmore's suspension pending investigation. By evening, Vanessa's carefully curated social media profiles had disappeared entirely. And still Jack didn't smile. He wasn't after vengeance, he was after peace. That weekend, the court moved swiftly. Judge Helen Blake called a special session to finalize Emily's permanent custody. Jack arrived early, suit sharp but heart pounding. Ava walked in minutes later, Emily holding her hand, proudly wearing the same sparkly sneakers from that first day. When the judge asked if Ava had any final remarks, she stood tall. "I didn't ask for a war," Ava said, "but I fought because I had to. And I'll keep fighting because my daughter deserves to grow up knowing she is loved, protected, and enough." Then Judge Blake turned to Jack. "Do you have anything to add?" Jack stood. "I came into this family by accident. But I stayed by choice. I'm not Emily's biological father, but I am something to her, and she is everything to me." Then, a voice from the gallery broke in. "Can I say something too?" It was Emily. The judge paused, then nodded. Emily walked to the front, stood on tiptoe and said, "I already have a family. It just didn't start the way most do, but it's mine." Silence. Then the gavel fell. Custody secured, case closed. No further petitions will be entertained. Outside, reporters swarmed, but Ava and Jack shielded Emily. As they reached the sidewalk, a voice behind them called out, "You think this is over?" It was Charles, still dressed sharp, still smug. But something in his voice had changed, desperation masked as threat. Ava turned to face him fully. "It's not yours to end," she said. Jack stepped beside her, and it never was. That night, as they curled on the couch, Emily asleep between them, Jack looked at Ava. "You think it's really over?" She didn't answer right away. Then softly, "No, but it's finally ours to write." Jack nodded. Outside, the wind blew gently. But inside, they held each other tighter, because sometimes the last threat isn't a storm, it's a whisper, and love is the quiet that answers back. 6 months later, the apartment was quieter, but not emptier. The news stories had stopped. The threats had vanished like smoke. The world had moved on. But something else had taken root, something real. Jack Callahan didn't just visit anymore, he lived there. His toothbrush stood beside Ava's. His suits hung next to her cardigans, and Emily had claimed half his sock drawer for her sticker collection. They never made a big announcement. No Facebook status, no press release, they simply became. One Sunday morning, Jack woke up before sunrise. He slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Ava, and padded into the kitchen. The old coffee machine groaned to life as he opened a drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring. Simple. Gold. No diamonds, just a promise. He stood in the quiet kitchen, holding it, replaying every moment that led to this. The courtroom. The hospital. The playground. The first time Emily called him Dad. He didn't need grand gestures. He just needed them. Later that day, they visited Ava's mother's old garden now, transformed into a public space through a local grant Jack had quietly funded. Emily darted between wildflowers, chasing butterflies and laughter. Ava watched her, the breeze catching in her curls, her eyes soft. Jack took Ava's hand. "She's growing fast," he said. "They always do," she replied, "even when you wish they wouldn't." He smiled. "That's why we build roots." Ava turned to him, eyebrow raised. "You planning to plant something?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring box. "I already did," he said. "I just hope you'll help me keep it alive." Ava stared at him, stunned. "I don't need a wedding," she whispered, "not in the traditional sense." "I know," Jack said. "That's not what I'm asking." She blinked. "I'm asking if we can build this on purpose, as a choice, every day." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "Yes," she said, "not because it was expected, but because it was earned." They didn't throw a lavish ceremony, just a small backyard gathering. Close friends. Lemonade. A string quartet that occasionally lost rhythm when the Flower Girls, Emily and her best friend, danced too close. Jack wore a shirt Emily picked. Ava wore shoes that didn't match, but no one cared. When the officiant asked if they promised to stay, Ava smiled through tears and said, "We already have." The months that followed were not perfect. Jack still had boardroom battles. Ava still worked long hours at the library. Emily still had days when nightmares snuck in, but they faced it together. They took dance breaks while cooking, left notes in lunchboxes, turned off phones on Sundays. They didn't build a fairy tale. They built something better, a life. One night, during a thunderstorm, Emily crawled into their bed, heart racing. "Why does thunder sound like yelling?" she asked. Jack pulled her close. "Because it's loud, but that doesn't mean it's dangerous." Ava kissed her forehead. "Just noise, sweetheart." "It passes." Emily snuggled in, her voice muffled. "We're not like that, right?" "Like what?" Jack asked. "Loud." "Then gone." Jack looked at Ava, then back at Emily. "No," he said. "We're the kind that stays quiet and stays forever." As the rain softened, the three of them drifted to sleep, heartbeats steady, breath calm. Outside, the world turned. But inside, something far more powerful remained. Not just survival, not just victory, but love chosen daily. Family built brick by brick, and peace earned. The kind of peace that stays. Life doesn't always give us the family we expect, but sometimes love builds something even stronger. This story reminds us that family is not defined by blood, but by choice, by presence, and by love given freely, even when it's hard. Jack, a man grieving the loss of his own child, finds healing in the innocent trust of a little girl who simply wants a father. And Ava, a mother who's learned to survive on her own, discovers that vulnerability can be strength when it's shared. For older adults in America, many of whom have weathered storms of loss, regret, or strained relationships, this story offers a quiet truth. It is never too late to begin again. Love, even when unexpected or unconventional, has the power to mend what the world has broken. In a noisy world that often values appearance over authenticity, this story whispers something gentle but profound. The most lasting peace doesn't come from winning, it comes from choosing each other, again and again, even when no one's watching. Because in the end, what stays isn't the thunder, it's the quiet love we build and protect every single day. Hoy ChatGPT.